Oh. Welcome to Heroes and Droids, your guide to movies and TV shows about superheroes, sci-fi, Disney in action. Oh, you guys. From Star Wars, from Marvel to DC, from Star Wars to Star Trek, from James Bond to the Fast and the Furious, we will review theatrical films and streaming delights you care about most. This week we're reviewing Miss Marvel, Episode 1, the latest MCU TV show on Disney+. Oh, this is going to be interesting. I am your host, Doc Wright, and joining me tonight are the crew, starting off with Chris Slattery. He's the Slattman. Sir, how are you?
I am so great because I'm going to Avengercon.
Avengercon! I hope your buttons work better than mine. All right. Also joining us tonight. I clicked the button and nothing happened. I'm like, all right. Welcome, please, award-winning filmmaker Christopher G. Moore. I know that came out
you might need to go to a doctor for that. I mean, get that figured out. It will fix your buttons for you. I'm doing wonderful. My buttons are working just fine. Thank you.
I can appreciate that, actually.
I mean, we're all, all of our buttons are getting a little bit older, as we watch a show that makes us realize how old we are.
Oh, stop. I know. Oh my God. All right. So yeah, that's actually be part of our discussion. Not how old we're getting, but never mind. What we're going to do tonight is embarrass ourselves endlessly. No, we are going to give you our first impression of the show. It will be spoiler free. And then we'll dive into a discussion, which we will get into spoilers. We'll get into everything that happens in the episode. And then we'll wrap things up with our final thoughts, our score, and favorite scene. Now, normally we do Easter eggs. Do you have Easter eggs for this one?
I do.
All right. I'm glad to hear that. We will also do some Easter eggs in the mix. So this is going to be a blast. What are we talking about? We are talking about Miss Marvel, the original series that is streaming on Disney Plus beginning June 8th, 2022. Episode 1 is called Generation Y. Directed by Adil Arbi and Fallah. Sorry. Written by Bisha K. Ali. Based on characters created by Adrian Alfona and Willow Wilson. Excuse me. Never mind. The cast includes Iman.
That's what you stumble over.
I kind of Zenobi Shruff, Moan Kapoor, Sagar Sheikh. Let's go with that. Yasmin Fletcher.
There's the cast. You can read it.
I should really just go. I need to go back to take English classes and learn how to speak this language that I've done for decades. Anyway, synopsis. Kamala Khan attends Avengercon, only to discover that she herself might have powers. Dun, dun, dun.
Better than anything Lucasfilm has put in
there you go.
Description.
It's accurate. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but it's accurate. All right, let's give our first impressions. Slattman, you're up first.
So before we start, I have to ask, have either of you actually read any of the Miss Marvel comics?
I haven't read her own comics, but I've read her in a book called The Champions, which she's a teammate of.
Okay.
Or a team member of.
Cool. So I have a very different, perspective on this than I think. So it'll be interesting to see how different we are. My first impressions of this show is that it oozes style.
I like that.
It oozes style. It's so creative with some of its scenes and some of its visual storytelling, and some of the way that these actors and actresses interact with one another, and it's awesome. From a filmmaking perspective, I loved it. I thought it was a very interesting show to watch. As far as the adaptation of Miss Marvel, I think it's solid. I think it's for episode 1 at the very least. It is a very good representation of what who these characters are from the comics. They've the Kamala and her family are nailed pretty well. And their relationships are very accurate to how they are in the comics. In the comics, Kamala's dad is a little bit more fun, a little bit more aloof, maybe. But while her mom is a lot more strict, but very loving, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And they nailed that. And the brother's kind of, you know, a cool brother, but kind of a piece of shit at the same time. And yeah, I got those vibes from him in that. And then Bruno, they nailed Bruno. Bruno is there's more changes to Bruno's character than anybody else in the cast, but what they did worked very, very well. And I'm very happy with what they did. I think this is a solid opening act to this show, and it, like I said, it oozes style, and it's so fun to watch, and I think it's well written, and these actors and actresses have good chemistry together, and even some of the minor characters are I think they're well represented, and and then the elephant in the room, I think it's great that this is showing off a completely different culture than what we're used to, especially in the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I've read online, it's actually, they get parts of it very accurate, and parts of it are a little not accurate and a little comic booky and a little fantasy, but it works. It's good. It works. It is a very respectable representation of I think it's Pakistani is their culture. Very respectable representation, and that it's just a win. It's like this series is just this first episode is just one big win. I have one very minor nitpick that I can't talk about until we get to spoilers, and
we will do that.
Yeah, it is, but it's such a minor nitpick that it doesn't really take away from how much I enjoyed this episode.
Fantastic. That's fabulous. All right, Christopher G. Moore, your first impression of Miss Marvel episode 1.
Well, first of all, not every project has to be made for a certain segment, or it doesn't necessarily have to be made for like overall everybody, or even the older people. And I think it's great that Marvel is kind of branching out and taking chances and telling different stories, telling different perspectives. And I feel like even though I haven't read any comic books, I've heard about it, and I think also not only are a lot of these new shows taking chances, but they're using different styles to take chances with. And I absolutely love the style of this. There's elements of stuff that I had a short film called Foodie where we had somebody was writing a tweet and it came up on the screen, and how they portray things like sending messages to each other are some of the most unique ways of doing that I've ever seen in any form, movie or TV. And just all and even though I'm somebody middle-aged white guy, I could still relate to elements of this. It has those elements of almost like John Hughes movies. It has a little bit of like 16 Candles, a little bit of Weird Science, it has a little bit of those type of things. Or even like, I don't know if you guys remember this TV show called Parker Lewis Can't Lose that I used to love.
Oh my God.
There's Ferris Bueller. It has all those kind of things, those kind of teen type shows that sometimes you'll get versions of that, I think, on like Nickelodeon or some of those shows. And it has those elements, but but the visual flair of that, of taking this person that, like, to me, I could relate to as somebody growing up. I mean, I still, as an adult, I still doodle when I'm in meetings. I still doodle when I'm at home, just drawing. You know, my mind's always in Fantasyville, and so I'm her. You know, and so I think this is and then just showing the sort of like, just showing how her imagination just animates the background, you know, because the part where they're bicycling and stuff, and I don't want to say too much, like a spoilery, but there's the way that they bring life to the screen using her animations and different things is really great. And so, and I think, and then also just seeing her family, seeing a different type of family that still has those elements of most normal families, like the overbearing parent, and one parent's usually more lenient than the other. And, you know, how sometimes their siblings were one sibling, we're so unfair, this sibling gets treated this way and I get treated differently, you know? So it still has those elements there that when you strip away the environment that we all growing up, there's still the basic foundation of that. So yeah, I love it. And I think the way it sets up how we kind of move into this person who got sort of gains these type of powers that have always been inside her mind, you know. And also the show feels very like ADHD, like a lot of kids are now. It's very attention deficit. And you have this in this character who can't like stay focused long enough. So yeah, I love it. You know, my one negative takeaway is the same thing I always have problems with, is when people portray like conventions. and it's always a cheesy version of what a convention is. And there's the Avengercon part is kind of cheesy.
It's heavy on the cheese.
It's heavy on the cheese.
Cool.
But it is kind of cool, but still, you know, I guess we live in a world where people make perfect renditions of people's outfits. And I feel like that would be much more commonplace. But anyway, that's just a nitpick of mine as somebody who goes to a lot of conventions and how movies kind of portray weird versions of that. But yeah,
get the nerd.
yeah. But I loved it. I mean, and just the camera work. There's like Sam Raimi level movement of cameras, the way cameras rotate and move. You know, there's so many there's a part where we follow her down from a tree. I mean, that I actually laughed out loud at. But yeah. I mean, you get into her imagination and that brings stuff to life. So I don't know. I had a blast. You know, I think in the very beginning, I was like, oh, you have to sort of get used to the concept of this show and how they portray things. But once I fell into this world, I was like, this is the kind of world I think I would love making stuff in, you know. It also has parts of Steve Holland's films as well, you know, like Better Off Dead. It has that kind of element too to it. So you can definitely they tell that they're kind of inspired by a lot of cinema that's come before it. But I think it's a really inventive, fun show that is taking a chance by doing something that's goofy and out there. And I think it's doing a great job of it.
Doing a great job of it. I will concur with that. So this is a character that in the comics I haven't been able to relate to. And I really, like I said, I didn't really encounter her until the Champions. And that's when I figured the character out and got to like her. But it's definitely not the series I'm looking forward to. You know, I'm very much the old school guy. You know, I grew up, you know, so the Hulk and the Avengers is definitely, you know, and Moon Knight is definitely more where I'm going to be in my comfort zone. So this wasn't high on my radar, and I was almost afraid that I was going to walk into this and just, you know, not get it. This show was a complete surprise. It was a complete surprise. It was so fresh and lively and vibrant and energetic and endearing, and the character. I mean, Iman Vellani, right? She is wonderful in this role. I mean, she really is the character. It's kind of remarkable what they've done. Excuse me. I really enjoyed this. And I like that it's taking its time and really planting the seeds with her family, and it's fun. You know, it helps that you know, it takes some liberties with how they communicate, like with the text. You know, we'll get into all that, which was visually stunning. Um, their plight in this particular episode is, very low key and straightforward, but it's something we can all relate to. We want to go do something when we're children, right? When we're kids in high school, and our parents won't let us. I mean, I think every person on the planet can relate to that. At some, as long as they had parents. Sorry, go dark there, but yeah. So it just, I don't know. There was just this energy and urgency to it, and that I just absolutely adore. This actually may end up being one of my favorite series now, just because of how it just feels fresh, and I didn't think that would be possible. So yay. Yay, right? All right. So before we get into our spoiler review of it, we're going to get into our Easter eggs, which are also spoilers, just so you know. Yeah. But do you have a good gaggle of them for us?
I do.
Gaggle.
Yeah, a Google, a gaggle.
It's a word.
It is. I think you're the only person that uses it. The young kids don't use it, like us.
It's not hip. Nope.
I'm not a young kid. Anyway, if you notice throughout this first episode, J.J. Abrams is probably jealous of all the lens flares. But those lens flares are on purpose. It's sort of like hinting at that because if you notice, a lot of the lens flares have the different colors of her powers and the Captain Marvel powers, and so that hints at how her powers come from sort of hard light, and so that's kind of interesting. So pay attention. There's so many lens flares that normally you probably wouldn't have as many lens flares, but it kind of ties into that. In the sort of the opening animated montage of stuff where she's telling the stories and stuff about the Avengers, one of the post-it notes on the wall says Captain Marvel sightings, Sandy Beach, Tokyo, Dark Alley, and Arena. So evidently she's kind of following what's happening with Captain Marvel. Also, she mentions listening to a podcast about Scott Lang, like interview with Scott Lang called Big Me, Little Me. So maybe that's how a lot of people know a lot of the events that happened, in the last few Avengers films and stuff is probably maybe from Scott Lang.
If anybody's going to let it blab, it would be him. Yes.
Yeah. She also talks about how, she has her own YouTube channel, the I forgot the name of it, something Sloth channel. And she talks about doing a 2-part series on why Thor is secretly a gamer, which actually, ties into that Thor played Fortnite in Endgame. In the very beginning, I think when she has the she talks to her principal, she's wearing a t-shirt that says "Ladies Get Information," and the ladies has a cartoon of Valkyrie, Captain Marvel, and the Wasp, and that actually is parroting the Beyonce song of the same name, "Ladies Get Information." Let's see. If you pay attention in the very beginning, towards the beginning, when they show this plaque on the outside of the school, it says Souls Academic High School, and it lists the founders. All of the founders are people who were affiliated with the creation of Miss Marvel, including G. Willow Wilson that you mentioned, who is the writer, and a lot of the artists, and I think another writer as well. So that's kind of cool that they incorporated some of the people who actually made, this comic happen to where this show could happen. There's a sign in the background when they're walking through the high school that says Dustin for Prez. He's a very good choice. And that actually, there's a guy named Dustin Berry who works in the set department. And he actually worked on other films like Ant-Man and Civil War. So let's see. The poster behind her bed is actually the Marvel cover of Captain Marvel #5, one of the more infamous, or not infamous, one of the more famous visuals. let's see. Bruno, her friend Bruno. Let's not talk about Bruno. Bruno references references the
Wow.
time that Kamala fell into Hudson River, and that's something that happened in the comics to Zoe Zemmer, and that led to Kamala's first superhero rescue. So it's a nice little sort of reference to one of the comic stories. When they're sitting on the roof sign behind them says Edison Electric, and it has bolts on either side, and so that might tie into the influence for her costume logo later, and became pretty from the comics. He makes her photon gloves, and if you actually look at the subtitles for the episode, they spelled out P with a capital letter, and that's the first I actually kind of reference to Monica Rambeau's name of her character from the comics. They never really mentioned in the WandaVision, but later on we're going to know that she's going to team up with her and Captain Marvel in the Marvels movie. So maybe that's the first time they've actually referenced her, or sort of a reference to her, as Photon, which was her name. I think she's also known as Spectrum, I think, in the comics as well.
And Captain Marvel at one point. Yeah.
And Captain Marvel as well. Yeah, of course. And Photon was also, of course, her nickname her mom had when she was in the Air Force. Let's see. In her fantasy walkthrough of how she's going to make it to Avengercon, she does a superhero landing just like Black Widow. Mm-hmm. So you can tell that she's also been influenced by other female superheroes. Avenger. Did you pay attention to where Avengercon was, Doc?
No, where was it?
Camp Lehigh, which is the place where Steve Rogers trained. Later on, Steve and Black Widow returned in Winter Soldier, and then later on, Captain America and Tony visited in the past in Endgame. So it's happening at Camp Lehigh. So now it's turned into a convention center, I guess. Let's see. A lot of things in Avengercon. I'll try to go through them as fast as I can. I think one of my favorites is the things that Hulk smashed. And it's just objects that Hulk smashed, and there's like a fridge with his handprint in it. So I just think that's hilarious that would be, like that, almost like a museum of things he's smashed. There's, of course, it plays in later, but there's a giant Ant-Man with a fairy in a pool, and that's actually recreating the scene from Ant-Man and the Wasp. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Of course, we get the Asgard portion where you can take a picture on the Asgard throne. There's Iron Man dancers, which are actually the same type of dancers that were from the Stark Expo in Iron Man 2. There's mucks of Molnir ale. There's let's see. There's artwork that references America's ass, which I didn't think would be showing up at a little kid show, but they get it. And I kind of want that artwork. Which is just Captain America going like this with a little bubble ass. Let's see. There, of course, they got the memorial wall to people who've fallen, and with the main focus being on Iron Man and Black Widow. Let's see. There's a Drax cosplayer at a table who's selling DVDs of the Peter Quill Starboy story, a Hail to the Planets docuseries, a 4-part Hail to the Series docuseries. So again, it's a documentary about Star-Lord, and again, someone isn't calling him by the right name, so it wasn't made by him. Let's see. There's a shelf behind Drax. It's a shelf of Rocket Raccoon plushies, but they labeled them as trash pandas. So I'm sure Rocket Raccoon will not be happy about that. There's a guy handing out pamphlets for Avenger Tours to New Asgard, which I'm sure is tying into the upcoming Love and Thunder Thor movie that involves New Asgard turning into a tourist attraction. Again, that's all the stuff in Avengercon. In the end credits, there's in the city, there's a Trust a Bro moving truck, which, if you remember, was from Hawkeye.
Oh no! Yes.
So evidently they have they're operating in different parts of the country. Let's see. Lots of the art in the end credits are actual art from the comics, different outfits, her red sneakers, scarves, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of the stuff that you'd see in a lot of her outfits, and also, because we get that one moment in this episode where her hand stretches out to catch. The artwork they show is actually artwork from the series, which is actually her embiggening her arm. And of course we get did you guys stay for the post-credit sequence?
Yes.
Okay. We get the Agent Cleary from Spider-Man New Way Home. How are we connecting to that? And of course he was the one that interrogated Peter Parker, MJ, Ned, and Aunt May in New Way Home. And so now he's sort of connecting with this new superhero. And so we're wondering if that might connect to other things, like Secret Wars and that kind of stuff. So anyway, those are all briefly a lot of the crazy stuff I saw this episode.
So you missed one.
Which one was that?
Zoe's costume was the original Captain Marvel costume from the comics.
Oh, well, there you go.
No, yes, always.
Yeah, there's and if you there's a lot of different outfits in Avengercon that I guess but yeah, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
And then the I'm blanking on the name of the villain, but the Thomas Edison billboard might be a callback to, I think it's the Inventor, or that was Miss Marvel's first villain. Because he was connected to Thomas Edison.
Oh,
nice.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. So let's where do we want to start with this? Do we want to start with your nitpick, sir?
Sure. So this is a nitpick that I've had about a few characters in the MCU, and it usually ends up not mattering in the end. But this one is kind of a big one to me, but also it could also not matter because they've managed to do such a good job with everyone else. And after building up the suspense, I guess I'll just say it. In the comics, Kamala Khan's an Inhuman, and she's not an Inhuman, as her powers come from a magical device as opposed to powers she's always had within her.
Yeah, they're kind of bringing the negabonds in play here.
Yeah, and I've had nitpicks about this with other characters that they've brought in. Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver are the first ones that come to mind because they're mutants, but they're not mutants in the MCU because legal reasons. But they've always managed to adapt them well enough, even if they abandon a big part of their character. So it's a very minor nitpick that probably won't end up mattering anyway, because while her being an Inhuman is a big part of her character in the comics, I'm sure that they're gonna write it well enough that it doesn't matter. And you just have to remember, this is an adaptation of the character. This isn't supposed to be a 1-to-1. So even if it is a nitpick, it's such a minor one that it doesn't really matter to me. But it just means that we're not going to get Lockjaw.
Well,
I know.
But
didn't think about that.
I don't know. I've seen some people actually kind of rationalize that she might be that, because they already have they've already mentioned her nanny or her grandmother or whatever was similar to her. And when she clicks the thing on, this sort of weird misty thing goes
and then
her.
she goes into the Doctor Strange-esque view.
Yeah,
and also someone pointed out that her mom made that food in 10 seconds.
I mean, I think that was more for laughs.
That was a gag, yeah.
But some people think that maybe her mom is hiding their background, that they actually might be have a connection to the inhuman.
Well, she's definitely hiding something because she knew,
she knows what that thing
the
is.
bracelets are, yeah.
But maybe because doesn't the mist unlock your powers?
The mist in the comics?
Yes.
Yeah.
Tarragon, if Tarragon mist? Tarragon?
That sounds right.
Terrigen.
Terra something. Yeah. The one thing that kind of sucks about them is that it means that they're going to have to rewrite some of like her iconic villains, like that they've made specifically for her, instead of taking a villain that's already in Marvel history and just placing it in a Miss Marvel comic. And some of those villains were also Inhumans, and causing kind of inhuman like inner like conflict between and it kind of stinks, because it just, if it goes the direction I think that the show's going, it means that the villain is going to have to also be rewritten, and they usually don't write villains as well as they do the heroes, so
they've struggled.
It'll kind I'm a little worried about that, but I don't care for Kamala Khan, because I still think that they did a good job, and if a magical bracelet is the MacGuffin for her powers, so be it. It fits in with the MCU.
I just wish there were two bracelets.
Oh yeah, that would make a lot sense.
It would for me,
especially because in the comics she has two. She has two on her. Yeah,
I'm sure that I am confident another one will show up. But I really like the incorporation of her culture into the costume, with the waist bandana, right, or whatever what you would call that. But and the fact that even Bruno says, bring that into it. That's you, right? That's what you need to do, and you need to be inspired by that. I really love that aspect of it. I love the aspect of who she is, and they don't have to. I don't feel like they're sugarcoating it, right? I mean, it's being. It's in a more of a comedic setting because of the show, but at the same time, it feels authentic. It feels real. I don't speak from an experience, but I feel like I'm getting insight into it.
Well, and I think, from what I understand, I think in the comics, isn't there a part where she actually becomes like a version of Captain Marvel, and then she realizes, no, I can be myself. And I think this is a better way about going about that, instead of her just like, oh, I need to be this white woman all of a sudden. So I think even though some people have had an issue with that, I think you don't necessarily have to go that route to explain that. I think it's just more about like, instead of just wearing this thing that this character wears, I'm going to incorporate, I need to make something that's more me, and because it even ties into, I think even what her mom says, don't you want to be, this good person? Don't you want to be, somebody or whatever? And I think she's going to come to that realization. I need to make it my own. I think that's when she's going to create her own costume, maybe with the bolt and stuff, and be something that fits her personality. Instead of her feeling I need to be like Captain Marvel, I need to be my own, Miss Marvel. And I think the way they're going about that, I think it's a good part of that. It's, incorporating her culture and, the types of outfits, that she feels more comfortable wearing.
And I like that the family feels well-rounded. Like there's a moment when the father comes in, he's dressed like the Hulk, right? Because they want him to, your father's going to go with you. You're both going to be Hulks. And she's like mortified, but she kind of slips up. She misspeaks, right? She says something, but it comes out wrong, and it hurts him, and you feel it, right? You see his hurt, you see the pain, but and holding back that pain at the same time. And it was a touching moment between a daughter and a father that I thought was really well portrayed.
Although somebody did point out they had a really missed moment. They should have played the old Hulk music from the TV series when he walked away.
No, my God, that would have been hilarious.
Gosh.
That would have been wonderful. But
that probably would have been a little too much.
Yeah. I don't know. I would have loved that. I mean, it would have still been sad, but I think it would have been a nice sort of callback to because you have this sad Hulk walking away. I was like, that'd be a perfect moment to incorporate that. I mean, everything else is kind of over the top and out there. So, but yeah, I did find that to be. I think that's the interesting thing. Is like you can have all these wacky things visually happening throughout this whole this first episode at least, and I'm sure it'll carry over to the others, but you still have that grounded nature of emotions and family politics and all that stuff that play into it, and that still feels grounded, even though everything else is, crazy and superhero-ish. And so I think they're picking a great balance for that, to where you can still feel and relate to characters, even if you don't have powers to sort of like big in your arms to catch someone.
Big. All right, well let's go ahead and wrap this up with our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. Slattman, sir, you are up first.
Yeah, I thought this was a fantastic start to the series. It can either go up or go down from here. But
yeah, well, that's true.
But I think it's a good adaptation of the character. I think that there have been worse adaptations of other characters in the MCU, and those have turned out fine. So I have very high hopes for this one. The cast is kind of like perfect, I would say, almost like I cannot think of I can't think of a miscast so far. Like, everyone fits the role very well. You can tell there's a lot of love and a lot of attention and a lot of detail put into this, and from every aspect. And as I said earlier, this show is just a joy to watch. It just oozes style from beginning to end, from the opening like animation to the ending credits. Like, everything is just fun. Everything just is enjoyable. Even the little down moments are still good and still ooze style and still are over the top without being too over the top,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I love it. I love it for what it is, and I am very happy with what they've done. I'm going to give this first episode a 4.5.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
It's a very good, very solid first episode. And my favorite scene is, I'm going to cheat a little because it's a combination of 2 scenes. And since there's only 3 of us, I think there's plenty of other great scenes that you can pick from. It's a combination of the scene when they're riding on their bikes and everything that she's saying is animated on the buildings behind them.
Such a great scene.
Yeah. And then when they're texting and the text messages are incorporated into the environment as it goes from character to character.
Yeah, like they're part of the neon lights, they're part of the sign.
That's part of the paint on the road. Like it's so visually just so cool to look at and so fun and so creative. It's so much better than chat bubble. Oh,
I'm so glad they didn't do that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I said that right.
Yeah. Just so great. And even with the nitpick, I don't care. Don't care.
Don't care, big hair. All right, Christopher G. Moore, what is your final thoughts, your score, favorite scene?
You kind of combined 2 different scenes together because you stole one of my scenes. I think this is a refreshing project. It's great to see that Marvel's sort of like just having fun and telling different stories and in different types of styles. Just every project we've seen so far, especially in television, really just shows how they're able to sort of like stretch their imagination and have a little bit of fun and not feel like they have to fall within that normal formula that we see in a lot of Marvel films. I mean, sometimes we see that when the directors like your Taika Waititi's, your James Gunn's come along, but this, I think a lot of the shows are allowing them to tell different stories that they might not have been able to do initially as a feature. And I think this, I think this is, and granted, this show might not be for everybody because it's definitely more about, the teenage experience. But I think, even if those teenage years are long gone, or long forgotten to some degree, you can at least relate to a lot of the issues that this. And as someone that grew up with my head in the clouds, always fantasizing about things, fantasizing about Star Wars or Batman or whatever. I really love this, and I think just bringing her imagination to life. Like Chris was talking about, like the whole scene where they're riding bikes and stuff, and it's like, oh, I can do it. And somebody does mashup cosplays. That's right up my alley, So just saying, like, I can do a zombie Captain Marvel, or and even if you pay attention, like at the very end when they ride off, all the characters are stuck on the wall and they've left them, and they're like, oh. I mean, they're just it's sort of a fun, creative inventiveness to a lot of the stuff that portrays her imagination on screen, and also, I mean, and some really, I mean, some inventive camera work. There's like one scene, I don't know if you guys remember, where she's talking to her principal, and this little split screen comes up, and
Yes.
and each side of it becomes a different shot, and I was like, what? I was like, how did they do that? I mean, there's just really they have a lot of fun with the camera, but yeah, I think it's a really great start to this series. I think it really sort of makes realize, okay, this is what this show is about. It's a fun series, that has, has a little bit of emotion to it, but it's just a really fun thing. And I hope that continues throughout. I hope we don't lose the imagination part of it, throughout this season. So yeah, it gets a 4.5 out of 5 for me. I think, again, as much as I like parts of the Avengercon, it just feels like people who've never been to a convention. It felt like something that would be
more like a carnival,
cheesy. Yeah, it felt like more of a carnival than a convention, and I think Avengercon probably would be in a bigger location. This felt like a gym for a school. I felt like that'd been a bigger thing, but that's just me being nitpicky like Chris. Let's see. As for favorite scene, I would have picked the texting thing alone.
Oh wow, the texting one. Nice.
But Chris has already sort of laid claim to that. So
I can give it to you. I can take back.
I'm not taking your leftovers.
Leftover favorites. Oh
no. Split screen. My own podcast. That's my favorite. No. I'll say there's so many parts that I could pick just visually and cinematography wise, but I will say I find it very funny when she's trying to replicate what she saw as her like jumping out on her tree branch. And she grabs it.
Snap.
And you see it from the camera from above. It's the way that whole thing plays out is very comedic, and that's the one thing I actually laughed out loud really hard. Because I guess I wasn't expecting it, just the whole branch to break or fall to break. I think a normal person probably would be dead, but I'll say I'll say like the whole thing of her planning, and you see the visualization of the plan out, and then just how it ends with her of actually going into plan and not really playing out like they thought it out to be. But
like, what are the chances my bike's still going to be there when we get
there? But I will say, I just to reiterate, that whole how they visualize texting is one of the most inventive things I've seen in a very long time of just using imagination to replicate that. Even though I made me wonder if they actually had like neon signs. I'm wondering if that was not a visual effect.
Was
that
practical?
Was actually neon signs that just turned on.
It would be simple enough, right? You would think,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. I too am incredibly surprised by this series, and I can't wait to watch the rest of it. Yeah, it won me over almost instantly. It just has this this flair to it. It has style. It has energy. It has it won me over. It simply won me over, even though it is so far from what is, me being its target audience is not a thing. So, but it's just really good television. It's really good storytelling. The script is strong. The characters are strong. The dialogue is wonderful. The inventiveness of it is, as Christopher was saying, is fascinating and lively. The acting is great. The chemistry between all the actors is spot on. There's just very little to, like you say, anything you're saying about it is nitpick, right? Okay, so the more you know about the character, the more those. If you're a hardcore fan of this character, you probably are going to find a little bit disturbing that they're not going with that route. But for the adaptation, it works, right? You can't really have Hawkeye in his original suit in Marvel universe. It wouldn't work, right? So this is, and and same thing with like the Scarlet Witch costume. They bring it in eventually, but so it has that kind of feel for it. And of course, the Inhumans thing is a very weird connection at this moment. And you never know, they might bring it back around, right? They still can. It's not like it's locked out, but it's certainly not from the so far. And they're bringing in an interesting. It's just winning me over, totally winning me over. And I was not expecting that. I was kind of expecting this to be, I'm going to watch it because I'm a Marvel zombie, right? I'm not going to watch it because I can't wait to see it. I'm going to watch it because I'm going to watch everything that's Marvel. But no, I can't wait to watch the next one. I really enjoy this character. So I'm not expecting that. So great job. The directors that I mentioned, they did Bad Boys for Life. I don't know if you guys saw that movie, but it actually brought back the Bad Boys characters and the fun in an interesting way. That was a little bit of a surprise. It was actually much better than it had any right to be. And their next project, they did this episode and they're doing episode 6. Other directors are stepping in for the other 4. And then their next project in post-production is Batgirl.
Interesting.
Yes. So I if they bring the energy to that gives me a lot of
wow, they're going
a lot of hope. DC. DC.
Wow.
Yeah, Disney. DC.
That. Wait a minute. Is that the movie? Or is that the TV series?
Yes, both, because the TV show, it was going to be a TV movie, and now they're saying they're going to take it to the theaters, and it's probably because of the talent of these directors, I would imagine.
Well, now that also that's the one that actually has Michael Keaton as Batman, right?
Yep, he's Batman.
Okay, well, that makes me even more excited because I think they're going to have a visual flair to that. That's going to be really fun to watch. I mean, I'm sure it's not going to have Batman texting.
No, but it might have Batgirl. Batgirl might be doing it.
Using the bat symbol to text Batgirl.
Yeah.
Click.
Yeah, that's what
I'm going to give it. Fly up.
I'm going to give this a 3.75. Sorry, no, 4.75. Excuse me. I really enjoyed it. 4.75 is my score, and my favorite scene. Gosh. There's a couple that I want to pick, but I'm going to go. I'm going to go with 2. So I'm going to do what Chris did, the Slattman. I'm going to go with the interaction between her and her parents. There's the one scene where they come in and they want her to dress up as the Hulk, and that goes south, and it just ends up with this really emotional, touching moment. And then when she comes back home, and she steps in, and her mom's in there. And what her mom says, it just really is quite powerful, in that situation, in the context of that situation. I mean, the dialogue itself isn't, but just in the context of how disappointed she is. They could have handled that situation in a lot of different ways, but the dialogue in there and the actress who portrays the mom did an absolute wonderful job of just portraying that, displaying that. So. I guess I like the family. I like the brother too. I like that he's kind of he's has at odds with his dad, the father, about even their religion, right? And then but he'll do anything for his sister, right? So he has, I got a way out, right? I'm wow, this show surprised me. I can't believe it.
Well, yeah, it's a loving family. They have their issues and certain things, but You know, I mean, they could easily made the brother like a total jerk or asshole or whatever, which I don't know. I don't know how the brother is in the comics, but
He's got a hint of it, but he loves his sister in the end, which is kind of the vibe I got from him here too.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. And
But-
and then at the Avengercon, didn't they have a little bit of the Rogers musical? Did I see that, or did I make the just wishing it was?
I heard
I
the
think they had-
Star Spangled Man being
yeah,
played.
I think they had music for that, which I've heard that they actually might be bringing to Avengers Campus.
Oh
in
no!
Disneyland. An
No.
actual musical.
Oh no! That's weird.
Yeah.
Steve Rogers the musical. I'd watch
Yeah,
it.
they're actually I forgot what they're replacing, but they're thinking about bringing it to Avengers Campus. But yeah, I don't know. I think the family's great. You know, I think it's funny how the dad is more lenient and the mom's more strict. You know, and so.
Mhm.
But yeah. I know. I'm right now. I'm like, oh wow, I can't wait to see the next episode. I want to see what happens. You know, now that she's sort of like embracing her powers and still trying to. It almost feels Greatest American Hero 2, to where she's trying to figure out her powers and can't get it to work right. You know, so.
Do you think they're going to pull a Daredevil and that she's not going to get her actual costume that she's known for until like the last like third of the series?
Oh, she's not getting into episode 6 at the earliest. Yeah, definitely.
Probably. I mean, as long as it's not like Smallville where it doesn't even get the costume at all. But yeah,
well, it's on the poster. It's on the poster.
Yeah, well, you know it's going to show up at some point, but
yeah, so it's there.
Might be variations of it, you know. So sort of like Spider-Man was, you know, where he has, like an early version, and
I'd love a wrestler suit esque. Like,
oh my god,
very homemade one before she gets like a very, very clean one.
Now, is her friend Bruno in the comics? And is he like her Q to James Bond type thing? Does he develop any gadgets?
He's the one. He's the one that makes the costume imbigginable.
Oh, gotcha.
You guys. All right, there you go. That's our review for Miss Marvel episode 1. We're covering all the MCU stuff, so we're definitely going to be doing the rest of this. And I hope you enjoyed this as much as we did. Yes. Slattman, Christopher, thank you for joining me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm really truly surprised. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I've seen a lot of the negative stuff out there, and it's great that we can all come together and appreciate something that was not really made for us, but we can still appreciate because it's great storytelling, you know.
It is great storytelling. That's a good way to put it. All right, let's say good night.
Good night.
Good night.